This is
Positively Hygiene
with your host, Amber Lovatos,
Amy Prenti,
and Angela Doe.
Listen on as we dive into the positive of dental hygiene.
So in our debut episode 1, we talked about different side gigs because we have different side gigs as well. And we did a poll in our story, and the one that received the most attention that most people are interested in and want to do was the social media side gig.
That's so interesting.
So we actually had some questions from our followers or those who listen to us they were asked, how can they grow? Where do you even start? And I think that's like the biggest question. Where do you even start?
So I think for me, was selecting a niche. Yes, dental hygiene. I'm more dental. I would say dental hygiene, but dental Spanish is my niche. And when I concentrate on my niche, I do grow. People go to my page and they know the dental Spanish. And that's really what people will know me for is my dental Spanish. I noticed pretty early on that how I would grow would be to bring value to somebody. And so value can be entertainment. Value can be being relatable. For me, it's teaching dental Spanish. That's the value that I bring. So my strategy generally is to get shares. I find that I'm not so much scrolling on my feed as much. And when I'm scrolling on my feed, it seems very bare, even though I follow over 1,000 people. I tend to go more to my stories. My goal is really to get people to share my reels or one of those like infographic, like those Twitter type things where I'm giving like a statement, but also really staying true to like what my niche is, because I can have a video that goes viral and has nothing to do with dental Spanish and people won't follow me because they don't know what my page is about. Sometimes I'll still include those fun things because I enjoy doing those, but it's really when I post on dental Spanish where like, oh, this is useful. Let me share this so other people can see it. That's how I'm gaining so many followers. Yeah, I had 10,000 followers. So crazy. I had 5,000 followers at the beginning of the year. 10,000 by March. We are in early weeks of June. I have 18,500. I think I'm going to reach 20,000 by early July.
Yeah, because you grew a lot in the past couple months.
Yeah. Which is crazy to me, just for someone I've had my social media page now for 3 years, and I am not even at 15,000 yet. So it's pretty, which I think also goes into another tip would be you get out what you put in.
Yeah.
So I chose to work clinical 6 days a week while we were building our home. So I really, if I ever did reels, I never did them at home because when I'm at home, I'm being pulled in 8 different directions, as a mom and everything. Sports, it's bedtime, and then I get up, I go to work, I come home, do it again. So I don't really have downtime at home. At work, I don't have downtime at work. So I would be doing reels on my lunch break is the only time I would ever. So that's when I would be able to post. So I struggled to even post 2-3 times a week a lot of the time. I try to always maintain consistency because I do enjoy it, but I do think that not posting frequently limits growth. If you do want to grow your page, you do need to be actively posting, actively being on stories so people can get a sense of who you are as a person outside of these 15-second clips.
Yeah, I was on the same boat as you, Amy. When I started my page to be professional, I was working full-time as well. And I grew, but not as much as I have in the past few months when I was able to commit myself. I think another thing, which I never really shared before. So personally for me, I changed my personal page to a business page because I wanted to incorporate pediatrics and being a mom as well, being able to advise on both sides of things or having the perspective of both sides. But I think when I think about it now, I think it hurt me because when I had less followers because it was my personal page, it's your friends liking here and there. I had maybe like 300 followers because they were, just my friends. But that all plays ultimately in your algorithm and seeing what your likes, shares from your overall post. So it says I don't even know, but let's say it says I have 800 posts, but really maybe 300 of that is dental hygiene, but including all the data from the other ones. And so I think it brings down my performance level. I think I still have a high engagement level, but it could be higher, if I maybe started all just a professional account and kept it separate and started like brand new.
I think to Amy's point is do not compare yourself to somebody like me and my growth. I work part-time clinical, very, very part-time clinical, right? So I definitely have more time to commit to social media than somebody else would. And I know, I'll say Stephanie Botts, we started kind of similarly at the same time. The Polished Posture Pros, love her. Love her. If you don't follow her, go follow her. But we started kind of at the same time. And in January of 2022, I had 1,000 followers. So it took me a whole year to get to 5,000. okay, which I feel like was a long year. Like October time, I stopped posting because I got sick, my infertility stuff. And Stephanie kept posting and she passed me up. But there was never a point in me where I felt resentful or jealous towards Stephanie because I knew that she had put the work in. Because I knew that girl, she is posting twice a day, 3 times a day. She is putting in the work. So I do try to be like reflective on myself. Like, okay, I didn't post. And I think Amy's the same way. Like I didn't post. Then I can't blame others for like my growth.
Okay, so now they started their Instagram and they're growing and now they're looking for sponsorships. And I know you guys have, and say with me, we all have sponsorships for some of our posts. How did you guys go about finding that?
I personally go to brands that I already know and have relationships with because I was a speaker before and a writer. I already had kind of some relationships. But if I was just starting out, I would go to dental conferences like RDH Under One Roof, like your state hygiene association or local events, and talk to those local reps and see if they can connect you with a person who deals with KOLs or key opinion leaders.
Or if you're working clinically in an office, talk to that rep and ask for that connection. Because I think I know, Amy, you've gotten some deals where it is an email, but sometimes you have to go for that personal connection as well.
Sometimes those emails are funny though.
Oh yeah. Or the DMs to do a sponsorship or collab.
Oh, like a free product. Or can I tell you guys? I've never shared this, and I don't know if this is the place to share it, but I did get an offer once. I think it was a paid gig, for a certain product, not dental. It was a feminine, I don't want to say the word because it makes me uncomfortable, but it was a feminine intimate electronic device.
Oh.
Oh my God. So I get like the craziest emails, Yeah. It was. And I was just thinking, like, do you not do your research? Do you not look and see what we are doing? So I've gotten other, Colgate had reached out to me, Waterpik had reached out to me, Andy RDH had reached out to me. I've done a lot of work with a lot of great brands. I never really was one to contact. I think I just never knew a template or how to speak properly to voice something like this. But I did have some pretty cool emails and some gigs that I've gotten from having my email linked to my page.
That was a good tip because I only recently linked my email, like the little contact button. I don't know. And it wasn't. And so now I have gotten emails, nothing of like substance, but I have gotten emails. So that was a really good tip because but also Amy has been doing this longer. Like Amy's been doing this longer. Amy's an OG, right?
I think something that's big too is, when I did Colgate, I only had 2,000 followers, but I do know me and the other ones that were selected for this campaign with Colgate, we had very professional page, very PG. So I do think keeping in mind what your reputation is that you're putting out on the internet. If you are someone who is going to be shaming patients or shaming other hygienists or, doing these controversial things, maybe your page will grow fast, but these brands are going to see it. And at the end of the day, is a major oral care brand going to want to work with someone that they see is projecting negativity out there against people who are vulnerable?
The other thing I would say is don't buy your followers because we can tell. We can tell that you buy your followers and the brands can tell.
You're buying a virus, essentially. It's going to ruin your page and you're not going to be able to come back from it. It's going to kill your engagement. I think it sounds so easy in the moment, and maybe you have some inward competition with someone else and you're trying to pass this one person and it's just so easy, spend $20 or whatever, you get 2,000 people. Well, now you're ahead, but you're ahead with emptiness. That's not going to engage with your page. And then that's what the brands look at, your engagement rate. So once you do that, you almost are in this sick cycle. That's why I say it's a virus, because now you have to buy again to keep up because your engagement rate is going to be low. You're not going to organically grow anymore.
Or people are going to look like, oh, why did she drop 1,000 followers? Red flag, red flag. Yeah. So how do you get paid for these sponsorships? Or how much do you get paid?
I think a general rule, and there is no general rules, but for me and what I've been telling people, I would say $100 per 1,000 followers on Instagram specifically. So if you have 1,000 followers, I would say $100. If you have 5,000 followers, I would say $500 for a reel. Not for, there's different for I would say for a static post for a photo, maybe that ratio at $50.
Yeah, there's rates to consider for doing a story or maybe 3 stories in a row, or one single static post or carousel, and specific number photos of carousel, or to have a highlight. There's lots of things you can
incorporate. Like you can charge for a link in your bio. You could charge per story mention, to pin a post. You could charge to make videos for other people's pages. I haven't done a whole lot of that, so it's hard to like give you rates for that. But
for anyone who doesn't know, that's what you see as UGC, right? User generated content. You would make a video on your own time. You send it to a brand. That brand posts on their page. It is not on your page at all. So typically those will pay less, but it is a good way to get started because maybe at 1,000 followers, maybe a brand wouldn't reach out to work with you. But at the same time, if you're producing quality video content, that's a good way to start getting your name out there.
And also thinking about like, how are they going to use this information? If they were going to take a video from you and it's on your page, but then they also want to share it with their followers, doesn't necessarily benefit you. I would add then your like watermark, like at the Latina RDH on there so people know where to go to, and maybe charge them a percentage for that as well, for that usage. I know outside of dentistry influencing or content creating, they have a restriction on how long you can use their content for. Yeah. Because what if like things change for you? You know, I once had a brand deal go wrong. I think I talked about it before, the one where they didn't pay me. And I mean, thank God I didn't sign anything with them, right? But yeah, they could have taken that video and ran with it forever. And I definitely don't want to work with that brand ever again.
And that's usually in the contract for usage rights. Yeah. And I know like my rate, and I forget, actually, I don't know. I'd have to look back on my rate sheet, but it's either 20 or 30% of my fees, and it's per 6 months or per year.
And when we talk about rate sheet, we're talking about like a media kit and Canva. I know they have some like templates you can use. Etsy probably like sells a template too, a digital template. So you can use that. So that way you have something to go forward and, you know, to meet brands with when you talk about it.
I don't do affiliate links. I don't do like, oh, link this and I get 15%. Like, no, I need you, the brand, to see my value, to see because it's not just my value. And for you too, it's not just that you're saying you're promoting this product, is that, look, there aren't that many dental companies out there. So specifically for like instruments, we have like PDT, we have American Eagle, we have Hugh Freedy. I would say 3 top dogs. So if I go out and I post on Instagram about American Eagle, who I do work with and who does pay me, I love them. But if they didn't pay me, PDT would maybe see that and be like, oh, well, she's a supporter of American Eagle. Or maybe they would just give me an affiliate link. That would hurt my relationship with PDT wanting to work with me on something like that. So you're not just losing financially in the moment in the content that you're creating or support of that brand. You're losing out your potential partnerships because you've already said, I backed this one. This one is specifically like the one that I like. Am I lucky to work with American Eagle? Absolutely. Love them. They're wonderful. But I feel like you do have to be a little strategic and careful, especially when accepting these. So when you're starting off and maybe you can't charge as much, maybe you want to start making money, I would wait maybe a little bit until you can get some good brand deals and wait for a company that is willing to commit to you too, because I think that matters. Because a lot of companies have great products. There's tons of great fluorides out there.
And think about your contract length, because in that time frame, you may grow. So let's say you do have 2,000 followers, which I think is around where we started getting our brand deals. And then you sign a year contract. Well, then within that year, what if you grow by 3,000-4,000? Then that's a whole different number.
That's the situation I'm in right now. I was at 5,000 beginning of the year, and now I'm 18,000.
Yeah, that's a big
okay, I did not expect that. Obviously, right? My goal for the year was like 10,000, maybe 20,000. And so now, yeah, that was my mistake. I signed a year-long contract. That's on me. And so now when I renegotiate my deals, and I recently negotiated one, I told them they need to account for my growth and the rate that I am growing at. So while maybe right now I'm at 18,000 followers, my rate is still $2,000 for a reel because I'm going to be at 20,000 followers soon. And so I need to account for that growth.
And explain that to them. Be like, hey, during these months, I gain X amount of followers. So I project that I'm going to make this much within our contract period. So that's why this is the fee.
So let's bring it back to getting started too. If you are getting started and say right now we're at the point of 2,000 followers and we're like, okay, like we're starting to feel ready to start reaching out to brands. If you were to now this is something I didn't know, so I never really did. So what would you say if we had to put certain pieces of information. If you were to draft an email, what kind of outline of a template would you say? I know having your audience in there, is it made up of mostly dental professionals, or like what is the value to the brand?
Yeah, so I will say, to your point of like, well, who is my audience? I think there are two types of dental pages for dental hygienists specifically, or dentists, doesn't really matter. There is a page specifically geared towards dental professionals, which I think are pages, right? Your pediatric dentistry, your general hygiene. I am dental professionals versus, dental span. It's very dental hygienist specific. That's who our audience is. Then there are those who are, maybe there's three categories. There's one category where it's like, well, your goal is to educate the consumer, to educate the community. And that's great, right? To educate people on like how to brush, how to floss, on oral disease. Your audience wouldn't necessarily be mostly dental professionals because we already know that information. Your audience is the public. Then there are those who maybe have lifestyle brand type pages and they sprinkle in some dentistry in there. I like to keep mine very clear dental professional because it won't confuse brands. Well, I try to keep it very specific dental. I try to make it very clear that this is a dental professional page, so it doesn't confuse brands. So brands aren't like, well, your audience isn't truly dental professional. Your audience is, maybe you include some dentistry in there, but it's not all dentistry. For me, starting off, I felt like there was more money to be made on the dental professional side and that wasn't why I started my page, than the consumer side of things. Because loupes, that's a big product, right? Versus somebody, an influencer, maybe selling soap. That's a small value product. They're not going to spend maybe that much money on that like type of ad because the product value is low. Fluoride doesn't cost a whole lot of money, but it's just something that you're rebuying and buying in bulk. So I feel like you could charge more money because there's a higher value of money that could be made. And for me, I felt like I just knew more dental brands. How would I get in contact with a Dove soap? I don't know. Loupe Company? Easy, right? Like I feel like we have that direct connection to them. And so that's why I keep my page very clearly dental professional. Not that there isn't money to be made on the consumer side of things. I do think there's a lot more competition on the consumer side of things.
And from what I've seen too, influencers that focus on the consumer, I do see a higher rate of growth. Not with you, Amber. I don't know. Your growth is really good. But I think generally speaking, the consumer targeted influencers for dentistry do grow at a higher rate or have more followers. But just from someone looking in, and this might not be true, this is just what I see less paid ads. Because even the Waterpik, the Sonicare, the Oral-B, they're going to reach out to dental professionals as well because they want you to project that to other dental professionals that can then reach out to the consumer, the patients. Exactly. So you're going to get products and campaigns from not only dental equipment and dental supplies, but also the consumer side through that liaison of you are marketing to dental professionals that are marketing to patients.
Yeah, completely agree. And yes, I think back to the point that dental professionals are hard to influence. They're harder to impress. They're harder to click that follow button versus the consumer. It's easier to impress them because you're teaching them things that they don't know, right? Versus dental professional, it's harder to teach them something they don't know. It's harder to impress them. And I find that because they'll come into my DMs and tell me how unimpressed they are with me, So yeah, I think, so it is harder for us as dental professionals to grow, but I think there's still money to be made, and there's still value that you can bring, and your value can be entertainment, right? Your value can be humor. I think Amy's super good at connecting with like the day-to-day dental hygienist, and she'll post some things where I'm like, oh my gosh, that is so true. Like that happens to me, and I just don't like think of it. And I think Amy's just so like in tune with dental hygiene. So there's different like strategies to that. You just have to figure out like what your niche, what you're going to offer.
And I do want to say for all of us, we never intended for any of this to be side gig. It was all part of what we love to talk about, what we wanted to educate. Like you said, dental Spanish. Mine is just educating dental professionals about caring for kids because I would get DMs or phone calls or text about how, they have a child on their schedule. What do they do? So I wanted to be a part in helping dental hygienists be comfortable in caring for the kids on their schedule. So a lot of what we're talking about is really our day-to-day experiences with growing our Instagram and talking to brands as well.
Final question. Do we always have to insert a disclaimer at the end of each post? When should we? Yeah. So if it's an ad, you should do a paid partnership button, do a hashtag ad. You can get in trouble if you with the government, if you don't do the disclaimers, or you could do like a hashtag gifted if it's just like a gifted item. But I am doing one with Typodonts because I just love when they give me free Typodonts, because I feel like that's just not something necessarily that I'm like trying to sell or influence you on, but it's a product that I use. I can show you how I like educate with it, and then I get a free Typodont. So for that one, I use like hashtag gifted, not paid partnership, because I'm not being paid for it. But you have to make it clear if it's an ad, that it's an ad.
And these brands will include that in their contract. They will say, you have to have this hashtag, you have to have this. In the first line, you need to say ad. They have their own rules because they themselves will also get in trouble if they're having you advertise and not disclosing. But I think the general posts, I think I've seen that sometimes. I know like Joyce the dentist, but she does a lot more consumer. She at the end of all her posts will say like, disclaimer, this is not any form oral hygiene instruction. Yeah, like it's very like, yeah. So I don't know, even I'm not too familiar if that is a necessity.
I think if you're doing consumer, then I would include something like that. I have worked with the smaller brands that don't know about like the disclaimers. I'm like, hey, we have to include these disclaimers. Somebody DM'd me and asked me, have I ever gotten in trouble? I have not gotten in trouble for social media, but I am very open with my employer that, I am never recording patients, that you should not do. You should not record patients. It's actually very hard to get like HIPAA approval, clearance to put a patient on your page. Even your patient tells you like, oh, I give you permission. That does not count. It does not count. Even if they sign something with the dental office, they haven't signed something specifically with you, not worth losing your license, man. Don't do that.
And that's why I get nervous. And I've had people ask me, how come you never do before and after photos of your patients? And then I know to me, we talked off camera about this, but for me personally, I just think of the person out there that's never going to the dentist because they're ashamed.
Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
So
join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcasts.
It's a little shameful. It's not in the way that people do it. It's not intended to be shameful at all. But I just think back to that small, vulnerable population that could see that and it could keep them from going to the dentist in another 5 years or so. So you got to think about that.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of shaming, but I don't film while I'm on the clock. So I'll film like after work, I'll film before work, I'll film during lunch. I'm not filming while I'm with patients. And then whoever's in my video, I ask them if they want to be in my video, like my coworkers. So it's like when they're off the clock. And I've had those conversations with my employer.
You also need to be careful from a business point of view as well. So you have the patient, the HIPAA regulations, but then there's also, I see some people will post their schedule and say, today I have 2 prophies, or, like this morning I had 2 SRPs back to back. You might not think of it in the moment, but you are sharing personal business information of your employer, So Joe and Joe's dental office down the street might say, oh, hey, up the street, they just did 2 SRPs this morning. How are they getting so many perio patients? Why aren't we? You have to think into this take this all into account, that maybe not share your schedule, especially not just for HIPAA, but just from a business point of view. That's not your information to be sharing.
I would also maybe not share too much personal information because people are weird. Like yesterday I posted about, and I know we open ourselves to some of this criticism, but yesterday I posted about my IVF stuff and infertility, and I had DM this morning from somebody who's like, don't let your pride of being Latina stop you from being a mother. Just use a surrogate, basically. And I'm like, you have no idea what you're talking about. There is no question about me having to carry. And I know that I open myself up to that because I'm sharing on social media. So know that sometimes you might get some criticism, and that can be tough. And having a good circle of friends who you can go to and talk to about it, I think that helps, because I was ready to jump, and Angela and Amy were like, no, Amber, just block them. I'm like, you're right. Just block them.
And that's a good thing to talk about. And I'm always big on this, is trolls. You're going to have trolls no matter what you're doing, no matter what you're saying. You're going to have people who, and I love flossing with Lauren. She said this to me before. She goes, don't worry about that person. They're just hiding behind a keyboard with their Cheeto finger. And now every single time I ever get a hate message, and I will say 98% of the time, I don't know what it is, and I don't even care about saying it out loud because I've said it before in my stories, it is middle-aged white men. It's all the time. And I think it's just men that hate to see females in a strong position or to have any sort of power, and they just feel threatened and they just hide behind that keyboard. And man, they were brutal and they come after me so hardcore. And that's always their demographic. So I always kind of laugh and I'll just kind of think, so that's something just to keep in mind. You're going to get haters. Let it roll off your back. And then just keep in mind Cheeto fingers and then kind of just laugh it off. And that's all I ever picture. And even if it doesn't matter who they are, I just picture someone in a basement stuffing their hand into a bag of Cheetos, like drooling down their shirt saying, oh man, I'm going to make this hygienist mad, and you're not, dude. Like, enjoy the Cheetos. Like, maybe get hot ones next week.
Well, there's so much we can say about the social media sidekick, and we hope we answered some of your questions. So if you do have anything that we haven't answered, send us a DM. You can ask us. You know where to find us at Positively Hygiene, and we'll see you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to Positively Hygiene.
Join us every Tuesday for a new episode.
Don't forget to follow us on Instagram for the opportunity for how you can contribute to our podcast.
And follow and review Positively Hygiene on Apple and Spotify podcast.